Alright, so these are the top Resident Evil 4 Remake news stories this week. Starting off with Resident Evil 8 VR2 mode got a new trailer. Next up, we have Krauser knife fight is confirmed and we know a few details. Sound director and composer speak on Resident Evil 4 Remake. PC specs for Resident Evil 4 have been revealed. Capcom is releasing a new airsoft gun for Resident Evil 4 Remake. Alright, so starting off with the first bit of stories, RE8 VR2 mode just released a new trailer. As mentioned in the previous RE news video, it's going to be free for PlayStation VR2 headset owners, and it actually coincidentally releases on the same day PlayStation VR2 is available, which is actually on February 22nd, so just in a few days. Now, what was interesting about the trailer is that it showed off a lot of different mechanics that the original game doesn't have. So for starters, there's stuff like dual wielding and a new feature where you'll be able to hold a flashlight, and you'll also be able to use the map in a different way. You can hold it up, with your VR, controllers. It's really cool. You can basically look at where you are, and so it's very intuitive in that sense. You can also now assign different weapons to different areas of your body, which is very similar to like the OG RE VR mode that came out for the MetaQuest, if I'm not mistaken. And you can also punch enemies and throw knives. You can also examine items by holding it. You can now actually put a key in a door and turn it, which I think is really cool. And the last thing that you'll also be able to do that the trailer showed off was the fact that you can actually play piano, which I think is going to be really cool. I definitely want to try that out and actually play Moonlight Sonata. And the other thing that I'm actually curious about is to see if they'll actually give you access to all 88 keys, or if they'll just shorten it a little bit. But all of these new features look amazing. I've never tried VR, but it's looking really good, not gonna lie. Also, the fact that it's free if you're a PSVR 2 owner is incredible. Now, the VR2 headset and the Resident Evil 8 VR mode actually releases on the same day. As mentioned, it releases on February 22nd. All right, so the next bit of news is regarding the Krauser fight in Resident Evil 4 Remake. That's actually been confirmed. And on top of that, they've actually mentioned that the fight is gonna be a little different from that of the OG Resident Evil 4 fight. Now, if you guys remember, in the OG RE4 Krauser fight, there was a lot of QTEs that would occur as you were fighting Krauser. Now, this is actually if you're fighting him in the boss fight or also in the cutscenes. So they've actually completely taken that out. As mentioned, we already know that QTEs are not going to be a big thing like they were in the OG game. But if anything, now we're actually going to be able to use the new parry mechanic. So that's a mechanic that's going to be very useful when we encounter Krauser in RE4 Remake. Now, according to an interview with the Game Informer with Resident Evil 4 Remake directors Yasuhiro Ampo and Kazunori Kadoi, the Krauser knife fight is still in, but is now built around the game's new parry system rather than the QuickTime events. In fact, it was the Krauser fight that inspired the parry system, as Capcom was looking for a way to make the fight more modern and reactive. According to Kadoi, parrying worked so well it was eventually added to the rest of the game. Alright, next bit of news, we actually have word on a new airsoft gun that they're releasing. So Capcom has decided to partner with Tokyo Marui, an airsoft manufacturer, to make Leon's gun, the SG-09R, aka the Silver Ghost, available to purchase for RE fans. It'll be releasing later in March and will be roughly around 32,800 yen, or that's roughly $243 USD. Now, the airsoft gun replica comes with 2 magazines, the standard Kendo logo on the right side of the airsoft, and it's going to be a complete replica. Now, with higher graphics with the new Resident Evil 4 Remake, you'll actually be able to examine the gun, and apparently this is a 1-to-1 replica. So yeah, it looks really good. I'm not into airsoft, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Now, the next bit of news is regarding the new interview that the Game Informer did with the sound director and composer of Resident Evil 4. Now, the sound director is Hiroshi Tamura and the composer is Kota Suzuki. Now, Game Informer actually asked a lot of great questions. I'm not going to be covering all of the questions. Let me know down in the comments if you guys want me to. But if anything, I'm just going to read out a couple of the questions so that you guys kind of get a feel of how the interview was. Now, one of the questions that Game Informer asked the sound director was, how is the new sound going to affect gameplay? Hiroshi Tamura actually answered and said, also, there's the sound of the wind. If you're inside a room, you're going to hear the sound of the wind the closer you are to the opening in that room. And if you're outside, the wind has speed and direction calculated by the GPU in real time. What this does is sound of the wind is realistic and matches what you're seeing on screen, creating a sense of immersion. Another example is, say you've got grass on the ground and trees swaying and rustling, the degree of how much they are moving and the loudness, speed, and direction of the wind are in sync, heightening the experience. Now, regarding the realism with the gunshots, Tamura had this to say. So for the sound of gun shooting, the closer and closer you get to the realistic gunshot, the less and less it starts to feel good as you play the game. The real sound of a gunshot is quite cold and mechanical, so if you use that as is inside a game, the experience, it doesn't feel good. So we balance the realism of the sound of the environment with the sounds of action that have been created to feel good, and that contrast leads to a better experience overall. Alright, so the next question was, for the sound effects for the enemies, was everything recorded from scratch? So Tamura answered, almost all of them are recreated from scratch. None of the sounds have been used as is from the original, but we have some sounds which have been arranged or modified from the original RE4 and used in the remake. For the sounds we recreated from scratch, we didn't just create any sounds we wanted. Again, we referenced the original, ascertained what the essence of the sound was, and recreated it in a way that respects the original for the sounds that are based in the original. I think some fans out there might be able to tell which ones they are once they hear them in the game. So it's actually really cool to see, that they are basically getting inspired from the original game. They're not just, starting from scratch. That was something that I thought was a huge disconnect from like the OG RE2 and the new Resident Evil 2. A lot of the sounds were completely different. So I really like that, they've taken what was worked on the past and kind of modernized it. They also asked Tamura this question: is there a particular enemy you were excited to revisit and update? This enemy appeared in one of the trailers, but Del Lago, it doesn't have a lot of sounds, but it took a lot of trial and error to find that sound, like its cry that felt right for Del Lago. It's an enemy that you fight while on the water, so it took a lot of work to create a sound that gives life to the character and also stands out from the environmental sounds occurring around you at the time. So that's interesting. Yeah, if I actually remember from the OG RE4, I don't remember the Del Lago monster, from the lake monster, doing any noises. Like, I can't think of it just at the top of my head. So, and if there was a sound, I'm pretty sure it wasn't like a cry or anything. So that's interesting that the new boss fight, or the new reworked boss fight, is actually going to incorporate a cry, right? So I'm assuming that when, Leon throws the last, spear, it's actually going to cry or something. So that's interesting. I'm definitely hyped about that. Now, they also asked the composer Kota Suzuki, and this is what he had to say regarding the game's music. I gave a lot of thought into what to carry over from the original, what new to add. For instance, the save theme, the merchant music, those are arrangements of the original music in RE4. I want fans of the original to pick up on those and feel happy hearing something familiar. On the other hand, for example, the music was battling a ganado. In the original RE4, it used a lot of noise type sounds, which was really innovative for a horror game at the time. So anyways, you know what? There's a lot more questions that are really interesting, so I highly recommend that you guys go and read the article. As always, I always leave my sources down in the description, so make sure to check that out. Now, next up, we actually have confirmation on the minimum and recommended computer specs, or PC specs, for PC users playing Resident Evil 4 Remake. So yeah, I'll just post it right here. You guys can pause and look at that. Well, if you guys enjoyed this video, then make sure to click this video if you guys want to see the latest breakdown of the Game Informer interview. Anyways, thank you so much for watching.